This time on Poll Hub, we're answering your questions. We've collected the best ones from our website, the Facebook page, and Twitter, and we're going to do our best to explain some of the answers. One of the most interesting, at least to us, is why there don't seem to be many polls so far this year on all the midterm elections. These are elections that could fundamentally change the makeup of Congress and how politics is done in the U.S. right now. So why aren't we seeing polls? We'll talk about that. And also, probably the most important question, at least today, when is a birthday more than just a number? Lee, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, I think we're going to have a lot of info.
Go ahead. It's your birthday. You could stumble on it.
We're going to have a lot of valuable information, insightful, and perhaps some that's subject to some misinterpretation or at least disagreement.
Wow, that sounds exciting. We better get started. And hi, everybody. I'm J.D. Dapper, the Director of Innovation here at the Marist Poll, and this is Poll Hub.
And I'm Lee Miringoff, Director of the Marist College Institute for Public Opinion, and as we'll find out, a little bit older, but none the wiser.
And I'm Barbara Carvalho, Director of the Marist Poll.
So we are on episode 41 of Poll Hub. We've done 41 of these, and over the course of doing this podcast since the summer of 2017, we've asked people for questions, and occasionally we do answer them, but we thought it's time to have a show where we answer the questions that have come in on Facebook and Twitter, and a lot of them aren't necessarily directed right at the podcast. Sometimes they're questions about like, well, how come you don't call me? You know, if you're not calling me, then how could the poll be accurate? There's questions like that, and we'll get to that. But one of the most interesting that is relevant to right now is we're in the congressional district called the CD19 or New York 19. And this is one of these hot congressional districts that everybody's paying attention to because it's got a Republican, but it's a district that voted for Hillary Clinton. So it's a red to blue district, as people are calling it, maybe part of the blue tsunami and all that. One of the questions we've had is, how come you're not polling it? How come nobody's polling it? Well, why is that?
Well, first of all, the campaigns are polling it. Those are the things that the public doesn't get in on the secret. Our public polls, at least when we are polling a particular race, do let the public in on the secret that the campaigns are basing their strategy on. So that's, first of all, a value of public polls. But I think there's an issue here that has to be raised, and it is, polls have gotten expensive. The media,
good polls
quality polls have gotten expensive. Media budgets are tight. It's a year, as you indicated, where there's going to be so many important races. If you're talking about Congress, you may be talking about as many as 100 important races. The Senate's going to have at least 15 or 20. So realistically and practically, you wouldn't be able to jump into all those. And we tend also to do the statewide, because believe it or not, it pretty much costs the same to do a statewide or a national poll than it is to do a congressional district. So the short answer to that is, it makes sense to do the bigger, more dramatic, and probably the stuff that has a wider interest. If we're doing the congressional races, we'd have to do a whole bunch of them.
But, it is very interesting because even though we have in the past had problems with polling and the types of polling, and we've talked about those differences here, public polls are still the best way for us to know what is going on in a particular contest. And Lee mentioned cost. The cost to do this correctly, to do it scientifically, can be quite prohibitive, particularly for primaries, because in primaries, you have to figure out, well, who is going to show up and who is the likely voter, because it's not necessarily the whole congressional district. It's first of all, in many states, the people who are registered in that party.
In New York,
it is, but there are other states, around the country where other people people in other parties, they don't enroll
primaries.
in a party. Yeah,
So,
they just need to be registered to vote.
You never know who's going to show up.
And also, they tend to be a very small proportion of voters in that district. So as a pollster, we don't really want to talk to everybody and find out everyone's opinion, because that really may be different than the people who show up on Election Day. So you do have that issue. The other thing is sponsorship. And the people who generally sponsor these public polls and make them publicly available to everyone and are transparent about it are media media sources, or a lot of the colleges and universities have also gotten into doing this as school projects and as student projects. So in both instances, those are places where, the dollars, are not a lot. And so the cost of it has gotten
So you have to pick
very
your,
high.
You have to pick your places and pick your races.
And the reason, and the reasons they do it is because they want to be able to inform their viewers. So if you have a very small media group, they're really not going to be able to afford to be able to do something that is scientific and accurate, and they certainly don't want to have mud on their face by putting out numbers that, aren't accurate.
And if you poll now on a race that's several weeks or several months down the road, you don't want to just be a one and done. You want to be able to trend it. So you're making a commitment to go in for multiple polls in the same place. But then you get to the point where you have, contests like there's a race in Indiana. I think there's been one public poll on that. I was reading yesterday that it was May 2nd, and yet to have a poll on the Wisconsin Democrats running for governor against Governor Walker in Wisconsin, and there's been no polls at all on that. And there is interest, and yet we can't. So the irony in this is, on the one hand, as pollsters, we often answer the questions, why are we having so many of these polls? Why do we need all these polls? We're drowning in all these polls. And then
we don't have any polls.
Why can't we have some polls? Because I really want to know what's going on
Right.
there.
So in the case of the New York 19, which is what this first question was about, there's 7 Democrats running in a primary. And I think if you went out and polled Democrats in the district, you're not going to get – nobody even knows who these people are, right? So it would be crazy to poll now. But even with 7, how are you going to get a reasonable answer? But they're – like you mentioned, the Indiana race is for the U.S. Senate. There are only 3 Republicans. But go to the next level. In the governor's race in New York, the state of New York, last time around, Andrew Cuomo was running against someone named Zephyr Teachout. There was not a single poll done in the primary, and she got,
34%.
A respectable part of the vote. This year, Cynthia Nixon is running. Actress, people know her. There's a bit of an understory with Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, backing her.
Third term, not his second.
And it's his third term. And that is being polled. Yeah. That race is being polled. So it can happen, but it seems like it takes a really big reason for pollsters and for media organizations to pay them to poll this kind of thing.
Yeah, but then we get into the silly polls already. So there's polls out now on the 2020 presidential election. So, if you want to know about New Hampshire, Suffolk University's done a poll. Senator Warren's ahead with 26%.
I just for the record, I don't want to know about New Hampshire in 2020.
I'm not going to tell you. But I will tell you.
Wait a second. Wait. Before you go on to 2020, I think one thing is important, though, is because of the expense that it does cost and the resources that need to be invested in a number of these in these races where it is a primary or it's a smaller race. Beware of polls that you do see, because they may be leaked by some of the campaigns. They may be kind of just one-off online polls or not terribly well done, scientifically completed polls.
And it's a buyer beware situation.
So please now go on your rant about 2020.
All right, so 2020. But that's okay. So 2020 is one thing. Go back and look at April 30th in 2015. So we're talking a year and change before the presidential election last time. There was a poll done of Republicans, and the top Republican, interesting enough, was Governor Walker of Wisconsin, who then dropped out. He had 16%. You know whose name is not in the list?
Donald Trump would be my guess.
Donald Trump is your correct guess. And in the Democratic side, no one was talking about Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
So not only are the polls perhaps of little predictive value or no predictive value, there just may not be some of those early polls of value at all.
For 2020.
So lots of other questions to get to.
Yep, sure.
One of them, and we get this a lot, and we see this in comments on posts that we make, especially when we're doing polling with NPR, PBS, NBC, the big pollsters, because they draw a lot of comments into our site. And we at Marist have been accused, and I think every pollster that has any credibility at all has been accused of being a push poll. Mm-hmm. We're not. We don't do push polls. But what are they? What are they accusing us of?
Okay. First of all, push polls, people think when they hear a question that doesn't sound totally balanced, they think that that is a push poll. A push poll, like other things in the polling industry, is not well named because a push poll actually isn't a poll. A poll is when you draw a few people, scientific sample, and then generalize from the few to the many. Okay,
And I mean, you can ask bad questions, but
Yeah,
it still doesn't make it a push poll.
That's right. But when you talk about a push poll, these are usually campaigns who are calling everybody they want to reach in a certain area, like independent voters in a congressional district or what have you, and they do it in the guise of a poll to find out who you are supporting or whether you're undecided or you're leaning to someone, so they know what mail to send, what ads to send. It's sort of a sneaky way to develop messages.
But isn't it a
Well,
step beyond
also,
that? They
yeah,
also tell you, did you know that candidate X,
Right.
is divorced 4 times,
And
shot
w-
his children, and
and
has
would
been
you
in
still
jail
vote
for
for
10
him
years?
if you knew that?
Right.
He
Isn't
was
that the definition?
arrested for drunken driving
Right.
when he was 22 years old.
So
and
there-
you find out stuff which can be very valuable for a campaign, but is not a
Well,
poll.
but it's actually, I mean, they're not really doing it. A push poll is not being done to collect information. A push poll is being done to put out some information, to literally push information out to voters that is unflattering about a candidate's
Okay,
opponent.
so here's another one. I have never been contacted to vote. This is a quote, to vote, apparently in a poll, and I don't know anyone who has. It's annoying because I don't know if it's a fair sampling of responses. I would think I would know somebody in Hyde Park or the Hudson Valley area, and that is the area we're based in, so this person writing in is from here. I never
Well, and
heard
also
of
they-
anyone being surveyed.
They think that since we're nearby, we should be
Right.
polling people in this area.
I never heard of anyone being surveyed, and I'm willing to respond. I even try to find polls to respond to, but I can't. How do I vote? So there's some fundamentals there about what a poll is.
First of
who
all-
wants to take that one?
first
You
of
know,
all, we want to.
but you know what? It is tempting because I've always wanted to be interviewed also. And one time we go up
have
to.
either of you ever been called?
I have never
I
been
think
polled on a
Seriously?
but I may be a little
I
hard
have.
to get.
Yeah, okay.
But one time we go up to New Hampshire quadrennially for the primary, and I had visited a polling place and was walking out of the door of that precinct to come face to face with an exit pollster, an interviewer for the exit polls. And I must say, I was so tempted because they came up to me thinking I was a New Hampshire voter, and I really wanted to answer the survey because I know how important it is to be a New Hampshire primary voter and how much impact you have in any survey. Of course, I didn't. I was very kind and said I was not a New Hampshire resident and could not participate. But it was so tempting.
But here's
So,
the trick.
so this question is about how come I've never been called, and how do I get into your poll?
Okay.
That this perception that it's like voting for America's next top model or something.
Yeah. Let me go with the second part. You don't ask to be included in a public poll. Unfortunately, you can't self-select. It's like when you're watching TV and they want to know, is Eli Manning better than Peyton Manning? And then you're supposed to dial in or something. That's not a scientific poll. If you're going to be scientific, we have to sort of approach the respondent and then get their cooperation, not the other way around. So although it's nice that this person would like to be included and sounds like they would answer were their phone to ring, you have to still be patient because the odds are not great. If you think about the nation and you think about
there's 325 million Americans, 251 million of them are 18 years of age or older, and so those are your odds of being in a poll.
But here's the answer also. You can move to New Hampshire because the campaigns are going to poll you constantly. I don't think there's a person in New Hampshire who hasn't been polled by a campaign poll, let alone the public polls. There's just so many polls there. And
All right.
But it's literally about getting your name picked out of the hat.
So another question. Unfortunately, any outlet can make such claims. I'm not sure what this was referring to. Who did they poll? How many people were polled? What is their political affiliation? There are numerous ways to skew polls. I don't believe most of them, and neither should your readers. So I think that gets at this fake polls notion that has become has grown, I think, a little in this current
because
political climate.
Fake polls actually have grown.
Do
it's,
that,
it's,
right.
It's not an illusion.
Right. So get at how many, where, one, there's this implication that this information is not available, which is patently untrue, at least in our polls. the information of who we polled and how many people and all that is right there. You just got to
And
read.
any quality and most scientific polls will be transparent about what they do, who they polled, when they polled, the questions they asked, all the information that goes into putting a poll together should be readily available.
So
and
when
if it's not, move on.
So when people hear that the Rasmussen poll is more heavily weighted towards Republicans, and some other polls tends to be more heavily or more consistently Democratic, what does that mean?
Well, it actually has to do with their methodology, and that's not, it's not an easy answer. The Rasmussen poll is considered to be more Republican, not because they necessarily go out looking for Republicans, but because they primarily interview people on landlines. They've tried to adjust that by adding people who are online, but that doesn't solve the problem of being scientific and providing an opportunity for just about anybody to participate in the poll.
So you don't think they're trying to make their poll more favorable to Republicans? It's just a product of
once
the
you start with
means
that
by which-
methodology, you're probably predetermining results to some degree, and the numbers for them are so atypical for what everyone else is getting right now by about a 10-point margin.
And
So
there
there's
are
a second
polls-
question that follows on that. Are you, Marist Poll, trying to make us believe, and this is specific to a poll that we did, that only 23% of the people polled were liberal or progressive? And we get similar questions about, are you trying to make us believe that only 20% are conservative or whatever? Explain how that comes up. This is self-identification. We're just asking people, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And we are asking it's not just that we're asking people, but we are asking a random group of people who are representative of Americans as a whole. Now, we don't live in representative neighborhoods, and we don't associate in representative ways in our lives, whether that's work or school, community or church. So it is sometimes difficult to believe some of the numbers when we're looking at all Americans, and we see it from both the left and the right because it's who we talk to, and it doesn't seem to make sense anecdotally, and that's why science can be so important, because we are making a very serious attempt to find out what all Americans think. And if the survey is done scientifically, we really can.
So if I live
And a lot of polls that are done scientifically show similar results, and that sort of reinforces the notion that they're pretty good. And then also there's an accountability factor. These are not, is Coke better than Pepsi? And there's no vote or no point in that. We get election day. We find out just how accurate our poll is.
So briefly, if I live in the heart of Alabama, in a very red area, I'm going to look at a poll that says that 25% or 40% of the people self-identify as Democrats. I'm going to go, how could that possibly be? Yeah. I don't know any Democrats. Yeah. And if I live in like the middle of Bernieville in Vermont, someplace in Burlington, Vermont, and the poll says that 45% of the people like Donald Trump, I'm like, I don't know a person who likes Donald Trump. That's a fake poll. That's basically.
And only 2% of the people are socialists?
Yeah.
Everybody on my block is.
Not your block. No,
Bernie's
I know.
block.
Bernie's block. So it is a momentous day on this particular day that we tape episode 41.
It is.
Because, why?
Well, since I turned 39 in what was a wonderful idea I had at the time to come to terms with advancing middle age, we asked as part of our national surveys whether someone who was 39, way back when, was young, middle-aged, or old, and it was a terrific result. I mean, people thought it was middle-aged or young, great.
Well, not only that, at that time there were an awful lot of
age.
older baby boomers and many people in the greatest generation who were still alive and participating in our survey. So 40 wasn't so bad.
So fast forward 28 years. I turned 67 today. I was born in 1951, and we asked in our most recent poll, a national audience. Now, this is not a poll that we do just for this. This is one question we add on at the end of a poll, but it's a real scientific number. As Barb was talking, the need to be scientific, we would not change for such an important question like this, and whether people think it's young, middle-aged, or old. So this is created somewhat of a ruckus here at the Institute in terms of disagreement over the interpretation of the data, as I indicated in the introduction.
Well, but the data is the data.
Well, here we go. 53% think that someone born in 1951 is middle-aged.
Well, actually, we didn't say 1951. We actually gave them the
67,
year,
sorry.
so no one had to do the math.
Sorry. You're correct. That being very transparent, very good. 40% say it's old. Only 6%, single digits, say
Because
it's young.
quite frankly, if we said 1951, I think people would have thought you were ancient.
It's actually a good experiment for next year. But what the bad news? So, okay, we still have a majority of people think that my age is middle-aged. However, the number has declined last year rather precipitously from 58 to 53. The people who think that it's gotten old has grown from 33
Well,
to
they
40.
58% thought 66
Was
years
old,
of age was middle-aged, and now
Yeah.
53 think 67
and those
is
who think
middle-aged.
it's young
And
has
what
gone
happened?
from 10 to 6. But here, Barb, before you go on, here, people who are over 75 years of age, 70% of them think that my age.
You want to talk
67,
about
is
people
middle-aged.
under 45?
No, we don't. And they have a very different view, and they haven't really developed that maturity that goes with advancing years.
Well, I think part of the
Not all
issue
of
Lee
them.
is having with these
Executive
numbers is that
producer
the
Mary
first
took
time,
exception to that.
for the first time, Gen Xers, those people born between, let's see, 35 and 50.
Yeah, 1980 and 1964, 1980.
Actually think 67 is old.
Yeah, I know.
A majority
So
of
what do
them
you think, Lee?
Well,
Do you think first? What do you think? Do you think of yourself as old or middle-aged or young?
Well, it depends what time of day you ask. Okay, so in the morning, I feel very old.
Yeah.
As the day goes on, I do feel younger. And as I tell the college students, which is an interesting place to work because they stay the same age. So if you don't feel older working at a college, then there's something about your perceptions that are off. But, the college kids, they get a sense of this and they have a respect that goes with advancing years. So I think that, maybe... Well, here, let me put it this way. I can stay up as late as they do. It's the next morning really hurts more. So does that make it older? Yeah, I guess.
And you know what? But hang on. But to be transparent, we have done other polls on aging besides Lee's age, and we have found that men actually consider the average age men consider to be old is 70, and for women, they consider 76. So you
That's 'cause
still
women live
have-
longer.
You still have a long way to
But
go.
the best age, what's the best age? 35. Americans think 35 is the best age.
On average.
Yes, which is funny because Stephanie Calvano, who computes these numbers for the Marist Poll, is
You're
in
gonna out
that
her?
age range, and she is.
I think you just basically told everybody
No,
how
I
old
did
she
not.
is.
I did not. I said in the range. She's
Okay.
happy about that.
But quite frankly, if you are happy, that is the best age to be.
Right, and also, I just have to say, having known you for a really long time, is that you don't act your age, and that's a compliment. And that's a compliment.
Well, I think
Right?
yes, and I
Absolutely.
think there's probably nothing that can be added other than that.
Well, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Lee.
We
Thank
would
you very
we
much.
would sing, but we did that on Facebook Live, and the audience disappeared. So we're not going to make that happen on
No, we
the-
don't want to, and we'll
the
be back
podcast.
next
And-
year with the latest numbers on this, I hope, and we'll see that maybe, I think what's going on here is that people, when they get to be 67 are seen as already pushing 70, and there may be a perception that's shifting in the data. We'll have to see if that takes place.
We'll
when-
find out.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this edition of Poll Hub. Poll Hub is a production of the Marist Poll here at Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Mary Griffith is our executive producer, and when it's her birthday, we are going to sing on this podcast.
Okay, good.
Oh, that's definitely fair. And we would also like to thank the Roper Center Archive at Cornell University, who provides us with the ability to look back in time at survey questions and results over the decades.
And if we haven't piqued your interest today, I'm not sure what would, but anyway, send your questions to pollhub at marist.edu. You can check us out on Pollhub on social media, Marist Poll on Twitter, Marist Poll on Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, or wherever you get this kind of stuff. It's all these new things and ways of finding information. But don't forget to subscribe. That's really important. And please pay attention to our next one. I think it'll be a little bit more serious than this one. I didn't even take a nap in the middle. Then I see I'm middle-aged. I'm not old. I did not need to take a nap in the middle.
You are
of
young
this.
at heart, Lee.
Thank you very much.
Happy birthday.
Okay, and that does it for this edition of Poll.